Jesus is in Nazareth, and it's a Saturday, and as what Jews would do on a Saturday, he goes to the synagogue to worship. That's when they still do, Jewish belief. People have Sabbath on Saturday, and that's when they hold their services. And he's given an opportunity to read from one of the scrolls. Luke 4:17 talks about this. It says, the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place it was written. I find it interesting, those words there. He found the place it was written. This was, first century, right? We've only had chapters and verses for about 500 years or so. So it's not like he was trying to remember what chapter in Isaiah. What you did is the reader this week would take up where the reader last week left off. So generally it wasn't someone coming in just randomly doing something. You just read through the scroll, right? What Jesus did, he took the scroll and he didn't just pick up where the other guy left off. He looked specifically for some scripture to read from the prophet Isaiah. And this is what I read. It's in verse 18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty of those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. So then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him, and he began to say to them, Today, right now, today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. And what Jesus was doing basically was making a proclamation at that moment, saying, this is why I am here. You could kind of say it was his mission statement for his ministry here on earth. This is what I'm here to do. Isaiah talked about it hundreds of years ago, to proclaim the good news to the poor, to set the captives free, to give sight to the blind, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Isaiah said this is what Messiah will look like. And Jesus comes and he's teaching and he's preaching and he's doing his thing. And on this day in the synagogue, he says, everything Isaiah said the Messiah would be, I am doing. You're seeing it fulfilled. That's what I'm here to do. So be it. I am the Messiah. Basically is what he's saying right there. Now, he gave his mission differently in different places. Sometimes he said, I'm here to seek and save the lost. Sometimes he said, I'm here to chase after the sheep, the lost sheep of Israel. He said it in different ways. And as you look at the ministry of Jesus throughout, read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, there is story after story after story of Jesus fulfilling his mission here on this planet. A woman at the well, where he is at, has made a lot of mistakes. She's made a lot of poor choices in life. She has a trouble finding the right guy. And he interacts with her, and Jesus says, you know what? I'm here to give you living water. A man's 12-year-old daughter is very sick. Ultimately, she dies, and Jesus goes to his house. He'd come to get Jesus, and the people are there for basically the funeral. They mourn and grieve, and the community gathers, and Jesus says, oh, she's just asleep. And everybody laughs at him. And he sends them all out and takes mom and dad into where the daughter is at, and he takes her by the hand. And he says, Talitha kume, this little girl, I say to you, arise. And she gets up, and she rises from the dead. A man is living in the tombs. He is possessed by demons. He is cutting himself. He is abusing people. The community has tried to control him. They chain him up. He'll break the chains. I mean, he's a violent situation. He's in complete control of these demons. They're scared of him, the people are, and Jesus frees him of demonic bondage. A woman's caught in adultery, and the leaders bring her to Jesus, and they're ready to have her stoned and killed because of her sin. And Jesus kind of looks at him like, what? Who of you haven't sinned? Go ahead and you throw the first stone. They all leave, and he has a conversation with her. He says, make better choices. Go and sin no more. And he forgives her of her sin. A woman's been bleeding for 12 years. Nobody can figure out why. She's for 12 straight years been bleeding. She's gone to doctor after doctor after doctor. She's spent all of her money, so she's flat broke. She doesn't know what to do. In Jewish law, if she's bleeding, that makes her unclean. So for 12 years of constant bleeding, she hasn't even been able to be with her family. They have to keep a distance from her because she's unclean. She's had a miserable life for 12 years. She's done everything she could possibly think of. And finally she thinks, if I could just touch the edge of his coat, I'll be okay. And she touches it, and she's healed instantaneously. He heals her. Lepers are healed. Blind men can see. A paralytic is lowered through the roof of a home, and that man is not only healed, but he is forgiven by Jesus. Jesus fulfills, you just read through the gospel, he fulfills his mission day after day after day. Story after story after story in the New Testament is about Jesus fulfilling his mission here on earth. And as things start starting to take a turn for the worst, John the Baptist starts to have doubts. We actually looked at this at the beginning of our last series we just did on doubt, because he's like, are you sure he's the guy? Things are going sour. This isn't how I expected things to go. And he sends a couple of disciples of John the Baptist, to Jesus saying, are you the one? Are you the one? And Jesus says, well, look at the evidence. What do you see? And it's in Matthew 11. Jesus answered them, go and tell John what you see, what you hear. The blind receive sight. Tell me if this doesn't sound a lot like Isaiah that we started with today. The blind receive sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised up. The poor have good news preached from them. He's like, what do you see? What do you hear? You tell me, am I the one? Am I the one Isaiah talked about? Have I been doing the things? Have I been fulfilling the mission that God gave to the Messiah here on earth? I think I have. As he's ending the end of his ministry on earth, Jesus, he begins preparing his disciples for the next step. Pretty soon they're going to take the baton from him, and they're going to take on the mission. They're going to do what he has been called to do. And he tells a story in Luke 14. A man once gave a great banquet and invited many. And at the time for the banquet, he sent his servant to say to those who had been invited, come, for everything is now ready. They would send out invitations and later on say, okay, now it's time. That's kind of how that works. And so he's like, okay, it's ready. Tell them to come. It's ready. But they all began to make excuses. The first one said, well, I bought a field. I got to go out and see it. Please have me excused. Another said, well, I bought 5 yoke of oxen. I need to go examine them. I got to figure out, I made a business deal. Got to finish this deal, see what I actually bought. I need to examine them. Have me excused. Another said, I've married a wife. I can't come. I got things to do, right? It's got a new relationship, a new marriage, and family things, obligations. Verse 21, so the servant came, reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house became angry, said to his servant, well, go out quickly to the streets and the lanes of the city, bring in the poor and the crippled and the blind and the lame. Does that sound like the people Jesus was going and talking to? It kind of does, doesn't it? And the servant said, sir, what you have commanded has been done, and still there is room. The master said to the servant, go out to the highways and the hedges and compel people to come in, that my house may be filled, was his goal. So they invite many. The word there means like most. Most of the people had been invited. Most everybody in that community, everybody they knew had been invited. Everybody hadn't, but most everybody had been invited. But they all came up with these excuses. Busy at work, things are going crazy right now, got family obligations, all the excuses that we read. I just can't do it. So he says, well, there's still room, so invite other people. Go out to the streets. Go into the highways and byways. Anybody you can find, the lame, the poor, the broken, anybody, just bring them in, the crippled, the blind, the lame, anybody with any disability, I don't care who they are, bring them all in. And what Jesus was doing was basically telling his disciples, I'm about to throw the most amazing feast ever. Heavens, he's telling the same thing to us. The most amazing event's going to happen. It's go tell everybody to come. Tell everybody. Not just the favorites, not just the cool people, right? The poor, the sick, the afflicted, the successful, the unsuccessful, the sinners, the law keepers. I have room for everybody. Everybody. That's who I'm looking for. That's who I want. And that's exactly what the early church did. They heard those words of Jesus. They grasped it. And other places where Jesus says this, I mean, it was clear in his teaching, and they followed suit. And they became a community of broken, disheartened, underprivileged, successful, poor, prosperous, messed up people who always had room for more. There was still more to be invited. Even the very first sermon ever preached in the church age that Peter preached in Acts chapter 2, verse 21, in this little piece he says, you know what? Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How many? All of them. Whoever. Bring them all. I want everyone. I'm not happy until everyone's been invited. Everyone. There's room for all. Not just the quarterback, not just the musical geniuses, not just the cheerleaders and the dance team members. It's also for losers and for winners and for lonely people and for popular people and people struggling with marriages and singles and people happily married. And it's for everyone. It's for everyone. There's room for everyone. The Apostle Paul gives this list of everybody's. I won't even call them somebodies or nobody. They're everybody's. They're just people. There's this list of people in the church at 1 Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians 6, the church at Corinth, that's what I'm trying to say. And he gives us a list of these everybody's. People who have been sexually immoral, who are greedy, who are idolaters, who were drunkards, people who were adulterers, did I say that? Slanderers, homosexuals, swindlers, thieves. He gives this whole list of people in the church. And then he says in verse 11, he says that like in verse 10. Verse 11, then he says, you know what? And such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. See, they were brought into this community of believers, people who were messed up and broken, maybe were successful, whatever it was, whoever they were, whatever their state in life, whatever they had done, they were brought in, and as Brian said, they were changed, they were transformed, they were changed, and change people, right? And the community grew, and it expanded, and it just kept developing, this community of believers with Christ in the center. And with Christ in the center, it became more than a club, more than a gathering, more than a place to hang out. It was a place where people's lives were absolutely changed. And their sins were forgiven, and they had fresh starts. That's the mission of Jesus Christ being fulfilled in the church. People bringing people into a community of people who believe in and follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. We would call that a Christ-centered community. That's what they had. Were they still having issues? Sure. Were they perfect? No. 1 Corinthians is all about Paul saying, hey, wow, you got to make some adjustments. But they were the community of Christ, a Christ-centered community. So we came up with a new mission statement a few weeks ago. We we unveiled it to people and kind of let them see it and taste it and kind of get a feel for it. And we did a bunch of research. We looked at who lives around here. We looked at things change, things evolve in society. So where are people at? Where is this church at? What do we need to do? What's our mission as far as what's Jesus calling us to do as a church? Based on what we see. This is the pool we have, right? This is the pond of which we're fishing. We're called to be fishers of men. Well, where are we fishing, right? And we looked at all this information, and we came up with these words. You've seen it probably a few times now. Pathway is a Christ-centered, Bible-based, family-focused community. Now, we'll talk about the Bible-based and family-focused next week. I'm going to kind of divide this into two areas. Today, I want to address the whole Christ-centered thing. The part of being a Jesus-centered church. Hebrews 12:2, don't have the verse, it tells us to keep our eyes focused on Jesus, right? We're to focus our eyes on Jesus, the perfecter of our faith. And to be a Christ-centered individual is to focus our eyes on Jesus. There's so much we can focus on, so many things to look at, so many things that consume us. We're to focus our eyes on Jesus. We're to take his mission as our mission. We're to take his priorities as our priorities. It's us putting him in the center of our lives. Now what I could have done today is just kind of read through the whole Gospel of Matthew or Mark or Luke or John today, but I thought, okay, that would just be a lot, right? So we're going to kind of narrow it down and just look at what is this? What are we talking about? Jesus was all about reaching out to the poor and the lame and the weak and the downtrodden. And like I said, the successful and the businessmen and the military leaders. I mean, anybody and everybody. There is room for everybody in his kingdom. But that means we're all about the poor and the lame and the weak and the downtrodden or the successful or the whoever. Everybody. Jesus was about inviting everyone to the feast. So we are about inviting everybody. We are not content with this group today, with this size of a congregation. We never will be content. Never. Because there's always going to be room for more. And we'll just keep, as we fill the place up, we'll send people out and start new churches, and we'll fill it up again, and we'll send them out. Because that's what the kingdom does. It creates this community of people who bind together, and we'll talk about that stuff next week, and who live like Jesus. Brian mentioned the Great Commission. How many know the Great Commission, right? I mean, he read it. You read it. You know the Great Commission, right? We'll put it up on the screen. It's Brian read it. We know it. We've read this before. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all I've commanded you. Behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. Most of it, that's not new. That's not like, well, that's a different verse. We know that. Most people know this. But the bigger question is, how many of us are actively engaged in it? The number of hands will drop dramatically, usually, when we get that's a different level. It's cool to know it. It's cool to say, yeah, Great Commission, that's great. How many of us, if that's our mission, if that's what Jesus came to do, if that's what Jesus said, okay, disciples, I'm sending you out, and this is why you're being sent out, that puts a whole new flavor on things. That is the measurement by which we can tell if we are a Christ-centered community or not, by how actively engaged we are in the actual Great Commission of Jesus. See, the measurement is not church attendance. The measurement is not how many verses you have memorized or how many songs we sing. To be Christ-centered would be to be engaged in his mission of making disciples of everyone. Everyone. Of everyone. To be a Christ-centered church is to be a people who are reaching into our world, where we are, where we work. The go, therefore, is actually better translated as you go. So as you go, as you live your life, wherever you are, buying groceries, going down the street, at the park, with your kids and their friends and their parents, at work, wherever you are, reaching into a world of poor or wealthy, losers or winners, neglected or popular, quarterback or water boy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Inviting them all of them, to the feast of the King. Now, it's not like you've never heard that before. If you've been in the church, you know that, right? But often, I think our frustration, most of us individually will have is, I don't know what to do with this. Right? I mean, okay, I get it. We're to make disciples. Most of us haven't really been discipled. I mean, legitimately. I sat in rooms of preachers, and they'll say the same thing. It's like somewhere a couple generations down. I don't want to blame another generation. I'm just saying generations of believers. We just kind of passed off discipleship to, we'll send them to a Sunday school. Now that is part of discipleship. Or we'll send them into a small group, and that is part of discipleship. But that's all we know. I don't know how to sit down with someone and talk Jesus. I don't know what to do with this. And we've made it, to be quite honest, a little bit weird and scary and kind of creepy. this is how I was trained. This is how you evangelize. You scribble a few notes. Maybe you're sitting at a restaurant or something, and there's a couple different versions where you draw like this chasm, and sin has separated. Here's me, and here's God, and versus sin, and there's hell, and it's terrible, and we're going to burn, and I'm like, I don't know, but I don't want to burn. What am I going to do? Well, what bridges the gap? That's the cross. We draw a little cross, and you say, see, Jesus is the way. And that's cool, and there's a really neat illustration, and it's all biblical and true. Or another one is, boy, I've sinned, and I'm separated from God, and I'm not going to go to heaven. That means I'm going to go to hell, and heaven's up here, and I want to get there. How do we? And we had these little stair-step thing. Well, you got to have faith, you got to believe, you got to have confess and baptism. And there's these little stair-step thing. And what we do, we'll spend like a total of like an hour or half an hour with someone, and we'll draw these cute diagrams, and then like a multi-level marketing thing, we'll kind of slide it over into them and be like, so, are you ready to give your life for Jesus? That's how I was trained. I think the last couple, 3 generations, that's how we were trained. And it was effective, and it worked for some, but it didn't ever create a discipleship relationship. It was a conversion moment where if they say yes, you jump up and down and put a notch in your belt, woohoo, and you go to the next person, and then that person, we don't know what happens to the person. They just kind of leave them. They're kind of floating. Eventually, they end up leaving the church because they never grew roots, right? We didn't know what to do with them. Or if they say no, then we're all sad and depressed, like, oh, and people just don't love Jesus like they used to. Well, I don't know if we really invited them fully to Jesus. We had this cute, clever diagram we made for them, and believe me, I've done it 1 billion times. That's how I was trained. But isn't that a little bit awkward? Even when I was doing it, I thought, there's something not quite, I don't know. I mean, it's like, that's what I'm trained, so that's what I'm doing, but I don't know. Maybe there's something better. Maybe there's something more Jesus-y. It smells a little more like Jesus if we do this. And so, this past week, I went to Joplin, Missouri. Ozark Christian College has a preacher teaching conference and convention and whatever they call it. I'd never gone. All my friends are like, yeah, you gotta go. It's really great. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Great. Anyway, I went finally, and it was fantastic. It was really good. Great quality speakers and worship and everything. And like the very last thing I did was attend this workshop, and the guy is speaking. I'm going, that's it. It's like what most of us are doing anyway. But I only do it halfway because I hadn't gone through the process I'm going to show you that he said to do. So I'm going to give him, I can't even tell you his name. I have to look it up. But he called this a sequence to making disciples. Anyway, sequence was his big thing. Here's what you do, okay? This is how you can be actively involved in the mission of Jesus Christ, making disciples, doing what you're already doing, maybe taking a simple step more. That's not awkward or weird or sliding a piece of paper saying, so, this is number 1, passion. Okay? What is it you like to do? Okay? What you like to do. Get involved. Do it. If you like to do something, do it. That doesn't sound bad yet, does it? I mean, here's your goal. Your goal is a general connection. You're going to be generally connected to other people who like to do the same. You like to fish? Go fish. Brandon's like, Cherry's like, yeah, but go fish. Find some friends. You're a fisher. Yeah, you can go 3 feet out your door and go fishing. You go fishing. If you like to golf, go golfing. Get a group of people, join a golfing group, whatever. You like to play softball? Get on a team, on a church team. Get on a civic team. Whatever it is you like to do, you go out and do it. The goal is to make a general connection. There's no pressure. You're not there selling Jesus. You don't have to carry a Bible with you or have your pamphlet ready to go. You're just simply building relationships. Number 2 is entertainment. Because now you got that big group, and you're going to start making it into a smaller group. Again, there's nothing painful about this. What do you like to do? What do you like to do? The goal here is a more focused connection. So say you got this group of 30 people that you're in a fishing club together or a golf club or whatever, a softball thing. Then you say, you know what? Hey, I like to watch He-Man movies, whatever. So we're going to have He-Man. Do they make He-Man movies? I don't know. I don't know why that popped in my head. Whatever movies. I was thinking Manly Man movies. We're going to have, grunt-style movie night and invite some of the dudes from that group and say, hey, come on over, we're going to have about 10, 15 guys, whatever, just going to watch movies and eat pizza and make noises. And whatever it is you do, you take that group, you're going to make a more focused connection. We're going to have a barbecue at our house. We're just going to do something. It's just for fun. Anything that you can do, we're just going to make a smaller group of people. We're going to start working out together. We're going to start running. We're going to start whatever. We're going to do something. But it's an entertainment. It's for fun, and you're getting a smaller group of people now. The next level is interest. You find something that interests them, and you engage with them. The goal here is a personal connection. Now, you're not just the other guy in the running club or the chess club or something. You're someone I actually know. You're not just one part of the smaller group who came to my house and had a barbecue with me. Now, you're in my phone, and I can know a little bit more about you. And that might be you're going to go for coffee once and say, hey, I just want to get to know you better. You don't have to be creepy about it. You have friends out there, right? I just want to do something. I want to hang out with you a little bit, and you're going to have lunch together. Maybe your mom's with kids, and you're going to just have a play date with the kids, and you and other mom are going to sit down and just have a conversation. Again, you notice nothing's creepy yet, right? You haven't said, are you going to come to Jesus? You haven't had that conversation. You haven't given them a Bible. You haven't, asked them what size they wear for the Pathway T-shirt we're going to give you. Or, we haven't done anything like that. Church hasn't even been part of the conversation yet. You're just making friends, legitimate, real friends. If you're doing this for the purpose of sneakily making disciples, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. If you're just engaging in people's lives, I just want to get to know you as a human being because I like to have friends. You like to have friends. We all like friends, right? Then that's what we're talking about. The next step is relevancy. The goal here is what he called a meso church. It's getting a little bit smaller, but actually there's a spiritual element now. Maybe that's the type of thing where you would invite them to a seminar. You're knowing them, and did I skip one? Oh, community. Don't skip community. I saw Joel back there. Okay, go back to community. You haven't invited in the church, but you haven't done the awkward thing, right? In this step, your goal is to introduce them to the micro church setting, right? Maybe your small group is doing a project at the homeless shelter. Just invite them along. Hey, we're going to the homeless shelter. Want to come? Like, yeah. Again, nothing creepy. You're not like, well, you're not part of the small group, I suppose. You don't just hey, got some friends going to do this thing. You want to help us? We're going to go help put shingles on someone's house. Yeah, you're good with a hammer. You want to come? You just get them involved in something like that. Then there's the relevancy, number 5. That's in order, right? This is the meso church, and this is where you go a step further. We're like, maybe in your conversations now you're actually friends. You're like, man, we're really struggling to pay the bills, and you're like, oh man, I can relate. Hey, we're having this Dave Ramsey class that Brandon, when he's not fishing, is teaching, and then you have a place with a spiritual thing going on that they get benefit out of it. There's value. Or I'm really struggling with my husband or wife right now. It's like, hey, we have this marriage seminar thing coming up. If you're interested, it might help you out. You get them into something like that. Which is why churches have things like that, is so people can invite their friends and so that we ourselves can be built up as well. But it creates another level of relationship that's relevant to their life. You still haven't even invited them to church. You're just inviting them slowly to Jesus. And you're seeing if you connect well with them, and they're seeing they connect well with you, and you're trusting each other, right? And the last stage is what he calls mystery. I think he just wanted some mysterious word for it. I don't know. And the macro church, this is where they actually come to a worship service, where they're finally like, well, gosh, why don't I just come to church? And like, oh, that's a good idea. That'd be cool. Yeah, we have room for one more. We always have room. No matter how many chairs we have out, where there's always another one hidden, right? We always have room for one more. That's that last step when at some point they're like engaged, they're ready to follow Jesus, right? Or at least figure him out even more. And then by then you have a relationship, and it's all just natural after that. I really like this because I'm doing most of this. I haven't been as intentional in maybe the last 3 steps. I'm actually heavily involved in a lot of things out there. No believer should ever say, well, I just don't know any non-Christians. It's like, well, then do this. Get out there and have some fun, all right? Get out there and live a little bit. Go out and play some softball. Go out and do whatever the thing is. And you'll have some friends. You'll make some friends. Because there's all kinds of people out there that equally wouldn't mind having a friend or two. The guy who taught this is an MMA guy, so he has a group of guys that I could not reach. He's a cage fighter. And I challenged him afterwards, then I said, never mind, because we'd both be embarrassed. It'd take him about 30 seconds. No, it wouldn't even take him that long. And I'd just be a bloody heap of mess. But he has built this relationship with these people, and he's earned their trust because he beats the crap out of them, and they beat the crap out of him. And so there's a mutual respect. I don't even want that kind of respect from those guys. I've seen them. No, I'll let someone else. But that's the point. And now, because he brought him over to barbecue night or something, whatever. He's followed the thing. Now, like some guy calls up and says, my daughter's cutting, and I don't know what to do. I'm at a complete loss. Who'd they call? The guy you trust. The guy who they knew he was a Jesus guy. And that was a legitimate call from an MA guy who called him. He had examples of people that they just come, because when the need arises, you want to have somewhere to go. It's like, well, you already have a relationship. And he never once did the little outline thing and slid it over there. But people are coming to Jesus because he's developing relationships. Isn't that what Jesus did? Sitting down in the well. He didn't say, wait a minute, let me pull out this pamphlet. Have you heard of the Roman road? It's like, I'm on it. No, this is a different one. And he didn't ever do that. He built relationships. And now, here's the deal. Sometimes, it all depends. You can go through this in 2 weeks with someone. It depends on the person and the relationship, or it might take you 10 years. But that's why you just always have relationships going. And because you just need relationships. But the thing is, if we're engaged in the mission of Jesus Christ, we can't help but let Jesus flow out from us. Because that's what being a Christ-centered person is in a Christ-centered church. May we never be content with what we got and who is here. There's always room for one more. Just to give you a heads up, next week, we're going to ask you to look for 3 people that you can invite to our Easter service. There's people in that list right now that you already have. You might have probably not thought of it in that context, but they're already part of your world. You work with them, you hang out with them, you're in a paintball thing with them, whatever it is you do. You're in with somewhere, and you have an opportunity. We'll give you some time to think about it and to pray about it. That's why I'm giving you a week early, just to start kind of letting that go through your mind. Who will that be? Who will that be? That's part of being a Christ-centered church. It's bringing them to Jesus. You're a changed person who's going to someone who needs change in their life, and let Jesus change them.